there's a quotation that I came upon in a book on quantum mechanics for the public called Quantum Reality by Nick Herbert, where at the very end of the book, he's getting to the point about why he's interested in physics, which is his field. And he says that he believes one of the greatest scientific achievements imaginable would be the discovery of an explicit relationship between the waveform alphabets of quantum theory and certain human states of consciousness. And I think that's what we really have here. I think that the ancient world, the Greek world, perhaps even earlier, the Hebrew world, and later the Muslim world, the cultures that have made claims that their alphabets are sacred, are special, and that their alphabets are the alphabets of creation or reality or other special status. People making those claims in all these cultures, and those claims are made for Hebrew and Greek and Arabic and Sanskrit and some of the Tibetan alphabets and many others, that people who make these claims should be taken seriously. Yes, there are people who make claims like that, and it's just religious puffery, or it's just sort of a poetic license. Well, our alphabet is special, we're going to call it. Many of the people who made these claims have well-established track records. The rabbis, the Greek mathematicians all have other works that they've demonstrated their competence in, and I think it makes sense to take what they said seriously. So that's basically what we're going to look at here. The question first arises is, how can a letter be an element of creation? These alphabets are sacred. I put the Hebrew letter B on the blackboard. This is its printed form, and this is its script form. I'm just going to leave them there. The question does come up. How can a letter, I just drew a letter on the black, how can that be an element of creation? What meaning can that have? This is the first verse of the text of Genesis in Hebrew. Normally translated, in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth. The first letter is the letter B. And the letter B in Hebrew, its name is Beit, means house, means archetypal container, the distinction between inside and outside. That's the first thing that happens in the life of a child. When a child is born, the first thing that happens is the child has to breathe in and out, and that's an unconscious action. And then a little later, the child has to eat. And in order to eat, it has to distinguish between inside, where the food goes, and outside, where it comes from. So the first element of our consciousness is the distinction between inside or outside. Also, there's an understanding of that relates to physics and to metaphysics, which we'll get to. I wanted to leave that on the table. Now, I wanted to start off, and I'll have to ask your indulgence, by reading some quotations. And the reason I'm going to read these quotations is because they contain ideas that are not commonly known, and that most Jews and Christians, I don't know if we have any Muslims here, but basically most people who know about the Bible, know about religious ideas, don't know this. And many people violently reject what I'm going to read. What I'm going to read is, I'll give you the references. These are mostly rabbinic references, but I go a little farther afield than that. So let me just read them to give you a sense of some possibilities here, because I'm going to be playing with the letters of the text of Genesis. And the question is, what right do I have to do that? Doesn't everyone know what the text of Genesis says? Hasn't it been translated often enough by now? And the answer is, maybe too often. First quote is quoted in Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan's book, The Light Beyond, Adventures in Hasidic Thought. And it's attributed to Rabbi Yehoshua Avram of Zitmar. And he says, "Our sages teach us that the Torah was created 2,000 years before the world. This is difficult to understand, since the Torah contains accounts of many events that happened after creation. How can the Torah speak of creation, Adam and Eve, Noah, the holy patriarchs, and all the other things recorded in the Torah? All these things had not yet happened when the Torah was written." And then he explains, "Actually, when the Torah was first created, it was a mixture of letters. The letters of the Torah were not yet combined into words as they are now. Whenever anything then happened in the world, these letters were combined and the words were recombined to form the account. This was true of the account of creation, the story of Adam and Eve. The letters combined with each other, forming the words that told this story. Similarly, when an individual died, a combination of letters was formed saying that he died. The same was true of the rest of the Torah. As soon as an event that was to be recorded in Torah took place, a combination was immediately formed corresponding to that event. If a different event had taken place, the letters would have combined differently."
The Ramban talks about it in simpler terms. Black fire on white fire. Eish ched al ish levon. So he says initially the way the Torah was given, all the words were together. There were no hefsekatevis. There were no spaces between the words. The Koyach HaTorah keeps the world going. Or as the Alter Rebbe says in the first chapter of Shayichud Ve'amunah, that the world was created with Asara Mamoris, with 10 utterances, and that's what keeps the world going. V'chol rega v'rega. It's a continuous creation. And the Alter Rebbe concludes that which Asara Mamoris, 10 utterances, the 10 utterances of the Torah. So it's the Koyach of the Torah, the words in the Torah that keep the world going. So over here, the Ramban says that it's a little more than that. It's not just the words of the Torah, it's the words of the Torah, the names of Hashem within the words of the Torah that keep the world going.
And I had this urge to look at the beginning of Genesis in Hebrew, which was a strange urge considering the fact that I didn't read Hebrew, although I did know the alphabet. Now, I have one talent in this world, and that is I'm a visual pattern recognizer. Maybe has become evident already. And my eyes fell on the letters, and I could not get it out of my head that there was something peculiar about the sequence of letters. It just didn't look like language to me. Since I couldn't read it, that was a further reason why it didn't look like language. It's a description of a hierarchical array. Now, I don't know about you, but it wasn't obvious to me right off that that letter, how that meant the secret of the universe. That just didn't do it for me. And the first word, that would have been nice, except I didn't know what the first word was. I mean, it's fine. Most people translate that first word, that is the first word, bereshit. It means in, and the word rosh, resh, and head refers to the head. The word in Hebrew means a head. And so it means in, at the head of, in the beginning. And it means many other things too. There's actually over 900 official Talmudic translations to the first verse alone. So there's a little flexibility in the meaning here. The first word of the next verse repeats the last word of the first verse. So even if this wasn't a natural unit, there's a fold point here. There's a reason to believe that I can stop at this point and examine. It had to be decipherable by whoever got it, no matter what their idea of language was. And the key for breaking into it had to be given, had to be there right up front, had to be very obvious. That over a course of 2,000 or 3,000 years, which is the supposed history of these texts, language becomes dead, becomes lost. Meanings change. It's hard for us to read Shakespearean English at this point. If they had something of extreme importance that they wanted to preserve, they couldn't assume that their language would survive. So if there was something recoverable, and it was really important, and the people who knew it or had it at the time wanted it to be recoverable, they would have had to have provided for it to be self-decoding. Well, I decided to look for such a way to break into the system. The Hebrew alphabet that Ezra came up with is this alphabet up on top, and added 5 letters at the end of the alphabet, which are final forms of earlier letters. If you want to make an M in the middle of the alphabet, you draw it that way. If it's the last letter of a word, you draw it that way. Well, if you start to insert final letters into the text, you start to define word divisions all of a sudden. So you start to be able to break the text up. To change a jot or a tittle of these sacred texts would be disastrous, would be a terrible heresy, might mean the end of the world. The important part is that the 27 letters is not an arbitrary number of letters. It's an explicit number. And it finally dawned on me that the first verse of Genesis had a string of 27 letters followed by the 27th letter. And 27 is 3 cubed. I said to myself, gee, I wonder what would happen if I counted the letters out in base 3, by threes. Started with the Aleph is 0. First count geometrically is the origin. And Aleph is really nothing but the head and tail of the snake that eats its tail, the Ouroboros, which is another name for the Hebrew alphabet. If you connect the second letter to the last letter upside down as if it came around under it, then you have a little Aleph. So I count from 0 to 26, and I count by threes. 0, 1, 2, 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 0, 2, 1, 2, 2. It occurred to me that I could use those same little numbers that are the position of the letters in the alphabet and consider them to be Cartesian coordinates. And so I ended up putting the letters of the alphabet on this nice little model that Dr. Rubik was kind enough to make for us all. Letter H, O21. I took that to be at the location on an X, Y, Z coordinate system, 0, 2, 1. What can I possibly do to compare that alphabet to that verse? Decided to check off on the cube the letters that were used in the first verse and cut away the rest of the cube and see what I had left. And I cut away the letters that didn't occur. And I was left with this object. It had no right to be symmetrical, and yet it was. I noticed that in this first verse, some letters occurred once, some letters occurred twice, some letters occurred 3 times, and the aleph, the letter A, occurred 6 times, and that's all. And then I noticed the letters that occurred an even number of times in the first verse are all on the axis of symmetry. And the letters that occurred once are opposite the letters that occurred 3 times. As a matter of fact, if you go through the text, the first time a letter is used in any verse, in the same verse, a letter on the symmetrical side of the cube is used. When I shine the light of base 3 on the text, all of a sudden I start to get patterns. And there's no question that there's letter-level coding throughout the 5 books of Moses. When I use base 3 to count out the letters, the whole first verse becomes one unit. There aren't any letters left over. Everything has its place. Well, what can I do? I still can't identify what that looks like. Torah is so unique, it can only be compared to itself. How do you compare a text to itself? What I did is I took myself a piece of paper and I wrote the text out on it. Actually, I took a piece of really backgammon chips on the tabletop. But the easiest way to see this is to think of these letters as on a string, as little pearls on a string that you can push around. And then I curled the string up such that the same letters came into relationship with each other. And here it is. You start over here, it's the first letter, and you go around following this little curve, this little coil. These first 3 letters line up with their recurrence. That's these 3 and these 3. It's extremely symmetrical. All letters are accounted for. And it's such a strong pattern that if any one letter were to have been lost or mistranscribed over the centuries, it could be uniquely replaced or corrected by reference only to the other letters in the same verse. And that's true as you go through the text. Approximately 1 letter can be corrected for each verse. Well, what is this? Well, first, the reason I started it here rather than on the edge someplace is because I realized this was on the surface of a donut, which one could pull through. And I didn't want these lines to cross over in funny ways, so I simply rotated it through itself. But if it were on the surface of a donut, then that would all work as one unit. And so that's what the first verse of Genesis draws. It draws a kind of donut called a 2-torus. 7's a real important number in the religious world, but in the mathematical world it's important too. Donuts intrinsically have 7 colored regions on them. If you want to make a map and you want adjacent countries to be different colors, and you make your map on the surface of a table or a sphere, then you only need 4 different colors so that the adjacent countries are different colors. If it's on a Mobius strip, a band with a half twist in it, you need 6 colors. On a donut, you need 7 colors. You never need more, you can't get by with less. So we've now identified the first verse of Genesis. It folds itself up into a donut. This is the bagel theory of reality.